not so much from CNN or PMSNBC. Now, I went ahead and opened up the phone lines for today, and we're going to be talking about this next. We're going to talk about this whole thing with the Management Audit Committee, and it's going to be a pretty long discussion. So if you want to be part of it, because I think that you should, the phone line here in the studio is 307-374-8989, 307-374-8989 if you want to be part of the program. And just go ahead and give me a call, because there's a lot to talk about with this whole thing. And since this was Agent 29, he so graciously brought this story, he's going to take over the majority of it. Let me just set it up for you. So yesterday, there was a legislative committee known as Management Audit, and they were talking about a bunch of the audits that were submitted from Wyoming municipalities, or I guess maybe they weren't all audits. But there were a couple of towns that they haven't really been doing anything. They haven't been doing any of their self-reporting. They haven't even turned in any of their I-9s or W-4s or anything like that. They're just kind of taking your tax dollars and doing whatever they want to with it. So it's a mess. And this sound that we're going to play for you here in just a second, it should make your head explode. But to set this all up a little bit further, Ken, why don't you tell us what's going on?
You like to say that you're right 99.9%.
It's true.
Of the
I
time,
am.
yeah.
It's documented.
Yeah.
Documented over 5 years.
So yesterday, I made a comment, and I want to lead off with this. Let the voice speak for itself.
Advocates of public education, the agencies, it seemed to me that their only argument was that you're going to destroy education if we do any sort of school choice. Could you just characterize for me what some of the...
So if you didn't listen to yesterday's program, this is from yesterday. Okay, this is Ken and I talking about a very similar subject. So just a little soundbite from yesterday's program. Continue.
Yes.
Those committee meetings were like. I mean, just explain it to me.
Yeah, I was busy trying to get a picture of the socks.
Grand Dragon Satan socks.
Yeah. It's not that different than any of the other agencies. They have been pretty well autonomous, being able to do whatever they want to do without much interference for so long. And now all of a sudden you have conservatives that are coming in and starting to say, wait a minute, and picking up a rock and looking into the rock and saying, what about this? What about this? What about this? And they do not like it. So it's tense. So that was yesterday morning.
Yep.
Within hours, I was proven
Now hold on a minute, Ken. I sense a setup here. Did you know this was going to happen? Because you can't.
Oh yeah, I had to buy off the guys from the Department of Audit.
That's what I thought.
Them to say. And you know what? If I were going to buy them off and set this up, I could not have even dreamed of having to come off this good.
You couldn't have done it any better.
Yeah, this was amazing. So, what you're going to hear is Representative Rachel Rodriguez-Williams, and you can hear in her voice she is absolutely shocked at the report of negligence coming out of Manderson. And so she asks a couple of gentlemen from the Department of Audit. The director of the Department of Audit is Justin Chavez, and I don't believe he says anything in the 7 minutes that we've said. But you do hear from Rich Cummings, who's the public funds administrator.
Wait until you hear this guy.
Yeah.
Wow.
Like I said, if I'd have paid him off and tried to tell him what to say to give us something.
I think you probably did. You're just tired of listening to my record on this program.
Yeah, I don't have any money because I have to lease a downtown office space. Anyway, so we'll start it, and whenever David you want to pause it and jump in here, we'll do that because it'll be a little start and stop. So here's Rachel to kick it off.
And I too have a similar question regarding the audit for the town of Manderson. Mind-boggling. The amount of negligence. I'm just appalled by the audit. Obviously, there's some.
All right, hold on. Okay, so most people in Wyoming know that there are a lot of really small towns. Some of them don't even have a town hall. Many of them may have a church, But it would be unwise for anybody to enter the church because it may fall down around them.
All of
Auto.
them have a bar.
All of them have a bar, though. Most all of them have a
Yeah.
bar. But Manderson is this tiny little town that's outside of Worland. And if you, if you're going to Cody and you turn off, and correct me if I'm wrong, but if you turn off on the No Wood Road, and you take off, and it kind of meanders all the way, and it's actually kind of a nice drive, but you'll go through Manderson. My first piece of advice there is don't speed going through Manderson because they don't have any other way to generate any sort of revenue, and there is always at least one cop. But it's this tiny little town. You'll go through it. It takes like 3 minutes to go through the entire thing.
How slow are you driving?
Well, I don't like getting tickets at all. And I've
right.
been scared a lot of times going through Manderson. Anyway, really the only thing that's there is a town hall and a police station and a few houses. You take a right-hand turn and then you turn off to go to, is it Grable? I think it's Grable.
Obviously, there's no bookkeeper's office.
No, there's, well, we're going to find that out. So go ahead and continue.
Some federal, potential federal consequences, specifically when it comes to like the IRS and failing to not produce W-4s, I-9s on file for any member of the town, any employee, 941 forms not on file. This goes on and on and on.
Okay, hold it right
No
there.
bank account.
This is going to take all program long if I keep doing this. But let's just talk about this for a second. Every town and municipality has reporting requirements. All of them do. And even if you're a special district like the dump, or and if you get any sort of tax dollars whatsoever, you have reporting requirements. If you have employees, and everybody who has ever worked for anybody knows that you have to fill out your the W-2. You have to have I-9s on file. And so any of these city officials or city employees, which they do, again, if you've gotten a speeding ticket in Manderson, you know that there's obviously a police officer employed there. So what you just heard Representative Rachel say is they're not reporting any of this. There is no paperwork on file.
Yeah, when I listen to that, I wonder what about all these employees that had to do their taxes? Did they get any kind of documentation that they could? It's staggering.
Okay, now one last thing, and then we'll continue, and I'll try not to interrupt it too much. But like I said, all municipalities have to file all this paperwork. It is not a secret, and if you're a small town like Manderson, it's really no different than a small business. If you don't really have that big an inventory, if you're not really selling that much, your reporting really doesn't take you that long. It's not that arduous. Now, if you're a town like Casper or Cheyenne, okay, that's a much larger operation, and the reporting is, exponentially more. But it's the same type. So really, all of the reporting that Manderson needed to do probably would take them less than a day to put together. And like Representative Rachel said, they haven't done any of that. So let's continue.
Yeah, before we do, though, I'm going to ask you to take just a minute. And, we were talking before the show about what an audit consists of, because I think sometimes, we hear audit and we think, IRS is going to come in and look at everything I've got. They're going to top to bottom and whatever, and then they're going to report me to the authorities or whatever. That's not really what these types of audits do. So just to kind of put it, and I ask you because you've been through one as a part of the board. So explain that if you will.
Yeah, all right. So an audit is, like Ken said, we have this idea that it's like these, IRS agents in their blue jackets with the gold lettering on the back, and they're going to storm your office and rifle through everything. That's not what happens. So if you get taxpayer money, there's a certain threshold, and it's either 50,000 or 100,000, but anyway, the number doesn't matter. If you get tax dollars, and you're a municipal or you're some sort of government outfit, you have to audit yourself. So what you'll do is you'll hire an accounting firm, and in Wyoming, it's most likely PMCH. There's very few accounting firms that will actually do a government audit, and PMCH happens to be one. So what they do is they take a cross-section of your books, and they look for irregularities. And so they'll look through it all. And the most common one is what's called a journal entry. And what that is when you've spent money on something but you don't necessarily have a receipt. This is the classic example, right? Somebody didn't return in a receipt, and the only thing you can do is go into the journal in your books and say, okay, we bought 10 quarts of oil, no receipt. And you just type it or write it in. Well, when the audit comes out, they're going to look at that and flag it as a possible location of fraud because there's no documentation backing it up. And so when you get the results of an audit, the only thing it is really is a report of lapses in policy and procedure. So you didn't do this right. Maybe you have the same person who is doing the deposit that is taking the cash at the door. If you're an agency like at the dump, when you take cash, maybe you're the same person that takes the cash from the customer, that puts it in the deposit bag, and then takes that deposit bag, takes it to the bank, and then you're the same person that enters all of that into QuickBooks. Well, the problem there is there's a possibility that you could fudge the books, right? If you're taking cash from customers, well, then, maybe that cash didn't make it into the cash register. And so the audit would flag that and say, look, you don't have redundant systems in place to prevent fraud. And so that would be one of the things that an audit would flag. So in the end of it, what they do is they present a report to whichever agency hired them, and then it just says you need to fix all of these things. Now, if you're a town or a county, city, or if you're a special district that gets a mill levy, you have to submit that audit to the state. And that's and correct me if I'm wrong, Ken, but that's where we're at right here. The audits from Manderson, and there's a couple of other small towns that they talk about, submitted those audits to the state, and they were just deficient.
Yeah, we get notices every so often of communities or organizations that are out of compliance, and they have a couple details on it, but not much. And I have them going back for both the town of Kirby and the town of Manderson well into last year.
Okay.
And they may well go further because it's not my job to watch that, but I guess it kind of is.
Okay, so you know what? Let's go ahead and take a break.
Yeah.
And then when we come back, we'll play you some more of that audio, and we'll get to the real crazy part. So let's go ahead and go to the break. Also, coming up on the program, don't miss it. At the top of the hour, we're going to play the interview with U.S. Representative Harriet Hageman. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Ever since gold backing was removed from the dollar, the value has dropped significantly over the past few decades. Experts say this is one of the main reasons goods are more expensive and your savings are worth less each year. How would you know how many dollars to save for retirement if the valuation of the dollar changes over time? Would you work all week for that $20 gold piece? Let's look at the valuation of this coin from the 1970s to today. When President Nixon took us off the gold standard in 1971, this coin traded for about $275. Today, it trades for about $14,000. Buying and holding rare coins using only a fraction of your portfolio is our suggested way to save for the future. Call U.S. Coin Capital at 1-800-878-2646 to get your free United States Gold and Silver Buyer's Guide.
Make sure that you subscribe and follow the Cowboy State Politics podcast. You can do that from the website, cowboystatepolitics.com, or anywhere that you get your podcasts. That way, you'll make sure that you won't miss a single episode of Cowboy State Politics. Welcome to Lessons in Civility by Morton Buildings. Gentlemen, is your garage completely jam-packed full of all of your unnecessary crap? And your lovely wife has been on your tail, nagging you non-stop to clean it out? It's not because she just wants to incessantly irritate you. Chivalry dictates that you should clear out a space so she can park her car inside and you don't end up sleeping on the couch anymore. To do that, contact Nick and Jesse at Morton Buildings. Their phone number is 307-674-2532. Not only are they the experts in metal building construction, they're also skilled at keeping you out of the doghouse. One more time. Their phone number is 307-674-2532, or you can check them out at their website, mortonbuildings.com. This has been Lessons in Civility from Morton Buildings.
Welcome back to the program, my friends. David Iverson, Cowboy, State Politics Live, Wyoming's most listened to conservative program. Welcome back to the program, my friends. I'm your host, David Iverson, doing what I was born to do each and every day with talent given to me by the great Almighty himself. It is a wonderful thing to be able to love, to do what it is that you love, and I get to do it every single day. Thank you for listening to the program. We really appreciate it. If you want to be part of today's show, which we're about to hit play on some things that should just absolutely infuriate you, and if you want to weigh in on it, the phone number is 307-374-8989, 307-374-8989. So before the break, we just kind of set up this whole audit situation with the town of Manderson. And we're going to replay for you what Representative Rachel said, and then just kind of let it play. And you just, trust me, you can't wait to hear this guy from the Department of Audit.
You might want to grab a roll of duct tape.
Yeah, well,
keep your brains in your head.
I have a bone to pick with you, Agent 29. You're supposed to keep me straight here, and I don't see a stack of rolls of duct tape.
I do have plastic spread around, so
well, I mean, that was wise.
It'll be easier
that
to
was
clean up.
absolutely wise. But
anyway, here we go.
Here we go.
And I too have a similar question regarding the audit for the town of Manderson. Mind-boggling. The amount of negligence. I'm just appalled by the audit. Obviously, there's some federal, potential federal consequences, specifically when it comes to like the IRS and failing to not produce W-4s, I-9s on file for any member of the town, any employee, 941 forms not on file. This goes on and on and on. No bank accounts,
That's the
copies
part that gets me.
of bank account statements. It's a big wow. I mean, you can go through this audit and just highlight, and there's some major concerns because we're funding this town to operate, and there's a severe amount of negligence occurring. So there's a letter at the end of this audit that was written to your agency in May, it looks like. What type of time frame is given to get their affairs in order to comply? And then my second question is what does interaction look like between your office and these federal agencies that might hold this town liable for some of these violations?
Mr. Cummings?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Williams. Okay, there was a lot of questions there. I felt like that, so I have to, so I'll try and take them one at a time. So again,
How else are you going to take the
our
questions?
audits are mostly just informational to the governing body that we're conducting the audit of, and
Wait for it.
we generally, I mean, you know, the old adage, you know, hey, we're with the government, we're here to help. That's kind of the joke. I mean, it's a joke in some aspects, but truly that's what public funds really is, the type of audits that we go out and we do.
Stop. Did you hear what he said? You've heard the old adage, we're from the government and we're here to help. Well, it's kind of a joke, but that's really what this is. He's from the Department of Audit, and he admits that what we're doing is a complete joke. Well, I do have lots of things to say about it, but go ahead, Ken.
Yes, it's pretty hard to get past that. I remember seeing a movie one time, and some guy walks out of an office building and goes to his car, and there's a parking ticket under the windshield wiper, and he pulls it out. He gets inside, he opens the glove box, and about 30 similar parking tickets just come cascading out and drop on the ground, and he throws it in the pile and goes on. That's what we're looking at here. We do these audits, we go through the motions, and nobody ever seems to care. Nobody ever goes back and fixes anything. It just is what it is.
And do you want to know why? Because our department, I don't even know if this is where you wanted to talk about this.
I don't want to know why.
But this is where it's happening. We do have a state auditor. Her name is Christy Racinas. I really like her. I wish that she would be more conservative on the SLIB board, but I'm, I guess for what she is, what her job is, she does a good job. But she's the state auditor, but she doesn't audit anything. There is not a single thing that the state auditor audits. Really, what she is a comptroller. She's a glorified payroll clerk, and if you ask her, she'll tell you the exact same thing. So the state auditor, they don't do anything like that. But we do have a Department of Audit, and guess what they only audit? It's not what we spend, it's what we bring in. That's really the only thing that they care about, is getting every single dime that the state of Wyoming is entitled to. And they don't really audit any of the expenditures at all. I mean, and if you sit down in the legislature, and Ken, you're down there on the floor, I sit on the top of the fishbowl. Ken gets to sit at the bottom where all the bottom feeders are.
I get to sit by Tom Kelly.
He's not a bottom feeder, but Harshman definitely is. I guess you sit away from him a ways, but
when you can.
But you guys spend crazy amounts of money. And you've heard me say this on the program before, that for people like me, not in elective office, I kind of think that $5,000 is a lot of money. I don't have $5,000 to throw around anywhere. Well, when you get to Cheyenne, $5,000 is peanuts. And I tend to think that $1 million is a lot of money.
$5 million gets to be treated like peanuts.
Yeah, and eventually you start thinking, well, it's only $10 million, it's only $20 million. And when you're in the position that you are on the appropriations committee, sometimes $100 million is peanuts. I mean, it's a slightly larger bag of peanuts.
Yeah, big peanuts.
but you get to a point where the money doesn't. It's almost like it doesn't matter. Well, the truth is, when it comes to audits, the state of Wyoming really doesn't care how it's spent, and this is absolutely evidence of it. The guy at the Department of Audit calls it a joke. Now, I was once sitting in a meeting with some guys from the Department of Audit, and we were told that really, and at the time, this was a couple of years ago, but at the time, guy told him that they've got about 100 different accountants that audit revenues, money coming in, but they only have about 5 or 6 that are auditing stuff going out. Now, think about the size of the Wyoming government. The state, counties, cities. I mean, we're going through, the budget was $11.5 billion last year, and there's only like 6 people watching that. And you can tell and we're going to play the rest of more of what this guy says. They're not really watching anything anyway. Go ahead and play it, Ken.
We generally, the old adage, hey, we're with the government, we're here to help. That's kind of the joke. I mean, it's a joke in some aspects, but truly that's what public funds really is, the type of audits that we go out and we do. We're really out there to just go out, take a look at their situation, and give them a report as to
that's it.
what it looks like.
We really don't do anything.
When the situation to, like the town of Manderson, the way it looked there, we consulted, do you want to go? Okay. Yeah, we
Has to
consulted
get advice.
the Department of DCI, criminal investigation, because we had concerns with the fact that exactly what you were saying there. Basically, all of their records were missing, and we really couldn't, without records, it's really difficult to tell what's going on with that and everything. And so there was a lot of concerns related to that. And so that's kind of where our step went before issuing the audit at all, is because we wanted to see where they were going to go with it. And they were in the middle of their investigation, and then they added this to their investigation. And at some point along the way, it was, we kept in touch with the DCI agent to see when we could release this audit, and that's kind of where we moved.
Okay, so where we're at is the town of Manderson, they don't do anything, right? They don't submit anything. They don't submit payroll records. There's no bank statements. There's nothing. These people are not doing anything. They're taking your tax dollars and spending it wherever they want, and nobody is keeping any receipts. And the only thing they're really doing is writing speeding tickets for people who are dumb enough to try to rip through that town. But there's no accounting of any of it. And what he says is, well, we kind of noticed that there was a problem, so we contacted DCI, and they started an investigation. And here's the crazy part about this. This is the first time anybody's hearing about it. Was yesterday in that meeting. Now, think about this. An entire town that is not doing any auditing, that is not doing any reporting, that is screwing their employees because they're obviously not taking care of their own stuff. There's a DCI investigation into this whole thing, and this is the first we've heard about it? I wonder why.
It sounds pretty bad, doesn't it?
It sounds really bad.
But in a minute here, Chairman Knapp, Chris Knapp, is going to chime in. And if you listen closely to what he says this is not an isolated incident, and this is not necessarily a big one. So let's keep her going.
All right.
From there, as far as where the investigation is going, we're not clear as to where that sits at this point in time. As far as federal agencies, we didn't necessarily audit this information in determining whether or not what effects it would have had with a federal agency and things like that. And so we just have the report out for publish just so entities are aware of it.
Okay, so stop. So all of the things that I just mentioned, he's got an investigation going on with the DCI. They know these people aren't doing anything, and they're screwing their employees, and they're not doing their job. And he just said, well, the only thing we did is we just put that report out, so if people wanted to find it, they could. And later on in the audio, you're going to hear Representative Rachel say, well, why isn't this public? And he says, well, it's kind of on our website. You have to go to and he describes how you find it, but I don't even, there's so much frustration that I have right now with it. This is the level of incompetence here. And we're not just talking about the town of Manderson. We're talking about the Department of Audit, that there's obviously a problem here. It's people screwed up really, really bad. It's his job to point it out, and he's not doing anything.
When Mr. Cummings starts after Rachel asks her questions, he doesn't know what to say.
No.
It's like he was totally unprepared for anybody to bring a question to this, which tells you exactly what I said yesterday. Nobody ever looks. Nope. And that is, it's their fault because they're not really doing their job, but nobody held them to account either. And finally, somebody's, as I expressed yesterday, somebody's picking up the rocks and looking underneath and saying, what about this? What about this?
Exactly.
I can only imagine where this is going to end up after a couple of years of conservatives actually taking a good hard look at what we're doing.
And let's talk about that for a minute. So the Management Audit Committee, before the program, I was asking Ken, I'm like, have they really ever done anything? Because I don't remember anything significant ever coming out of the Management Audit Committee. I don't think they do anything.
Well, they were. I was reading some stuff at the time. Randall Luthi was the chairman in 2005, and it had to do with my favorite agency, the Wyoming Business Council.
Oh yeah,
And-
you've made some headlines.
Yeah,
about that.
and I made another one yesterday, but anyway. So that was a fairly, it's a 79-page report talking about all the flaws, and then they went ahead from there. So I'm going and researching what new rules they brought up and how much has it worked. Because as you read through the complaints, they're still valid today, 20 years later. So have we fixed anything, or are we still just throwing money at the wall? And that for so long has been the way to do it. Well, in recent years, management audit has been
A trash committee.
a joke. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it hasn't really been used for anything. So now we come out and we actually start looking at things and using the power, like the subpoena power, that are granted to them. And man, you should have heard the pushback
Oh,
yesterday.
We're
Senator Rothfuss was entirely upset that we would even dare to question.
Yes, and that is the point. Now, I don't want to lose sight of mentioning who has been in power since 2005, or since like any of us can remember. It's not been conservatives; it's been the redcoats. People like Albert Sommers and Steve Harshman and Clark Stith and Bob Nicholas and all of those people. And you just heard Ken, and I can tell you for a fact, I don't think the Management Audit Committee has done anything before this. And, maybe there's been another interim committee meeting of management audit, but before this year, I haven't heard of anything coming out of there. And at one point, the legislature actually talked about doing away with the Management Audit Committee because they weren't doing anything with it. I mean, it was just one of those committees out there that you get appointed to and you really don't even have a meeting. And, maybe you just go and have a sandwich and a cup of coffee, but that's about it. So we can't lose sight of who has been in charge and has had the ability to get answers on all of these things, and who hasn't done anything with it. It's the redcoats: Steve Harshman, Albert Sommers, Clark Stith, Bob Nicholas. Throw Cyrus Western in there too. All of the redcoats are the folks that allowed this situation to happen. And it wasn't until conservatives got into power and they started asking questions. Hey, what about this? Why are you spending money over here? Where's this money going? By the way, do you have an audit? And here's the irony. And the left always tries to set things up for themselves ahead of time. Do you remember the Doge hats that the Appropriations Committee was wearing? Ken was wearing one yesterday on the program. You remember the uproar about that? Tom Lubnow and his column calling them clowns, and all of the outrage from the cow pie saying, well, we don't need to Doge Wyoming's books. There was a couple of pieces making fun of Appropriations Chair John Baer for suggesting that we need to Doge Wyoming's books. And they tried to make fun of it. Do you know why? Because they knew that this was coming. Because they knew that conservatives were going to kick over enough rocks and find that they haven't been doing, that they, being the redcoats, the people that have been in charge for 50 years, haven't been managing your money. That's why all of that happened. And I mean, this is a perfect example of the inadequacy, the inefficiency, the absolute incompetence of the Wyoming left. I mean, this is exactly what you get. Let's go ahead and listen to some more of it.
There was no, there was no discussion in terms of like discussing anything with any federal agencies at this point, just because we weren't sure as to what the results of the investigation were going to do. So,
Follow up?
Follow up, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Thank you for that information. Alarming.
Information.
Really. So I'm new to this committee, but historically, and I don't know how long you've been employed by Department of Audit, either one of you, but historically, have you ever seen a situation similar to this that's occurred within the state? And has there ever been a situation where the legislature has withheld funds from a municipality or a county based on the severity of an audit? And if so, what's the default?
And I'm going to jump in here because that's one of the good ones. I would say, and maybe adding on to the question, is your department is a Department of Audit.
That's your
So
job.
you recognize the deficiencies, you notify them of deficiencies. There's really no mechanism for you to follow up as far as accountability goes. I think we've tried in the past to tie it to revenue. And we've offered bills in the
Listen to
past that have
this.
tied it to revenue. And some of our legislators have decided that that wasn't the way to go, that it was more training and more, to take a softer
There
approach.
it
So
is.
what's your comment on that? Because
let's go ahead and listen
again,
to what
you're
he
kind
says
of a department that recognizes the alarm, but then those that would be able to do something about it, like either in another department or with the legislature, what would you say?
Mr. Chairman, Representative. You raise a good point. The Department of Audit doesn't have statutorily a lot of enforcement authority. We have authority to look at financial information and issue a report. We don't have a lot of authority to make anything happen if they still don't comply.
Okay.
Statute
All right,
affords us
that's
the
good
authority
enough.
to.
So let me just break down what you just heard. So the question is, well, there's two things here. First, Chairman Knapp says, there have been bills in the past to tie compliance to revenue. That is, if you don't submit your reports, you don't get paid. And think about it in terms of your daily life. So just about everybody I know has a job that they go to. They work for somebody else. If you don't submit your time card, generally, do you get a paycheck? No, because there's no way for your employer to know how much you actually worked. So filling out a time card is the necessary requirement to get a paycheck. But that's not how it works with the Wyoming government. No. You don't have, the counties, cities, and towns evidently don't have to submit their time card or their audit reports or any of the required documentation for them to get paid. And so what Chairman Knapp is telling you is there have been attempts in the legislature to say, hey man, if you don't comply with your requirements, you're not getting your disbursement. And those have been shot down by the people in charge. Now, let me ask you this, and Ken, if you want to chime in on this one, conservatives are in charge now. And do you suppose, and just, I don't know, maybe this is too far out there, but do you suppose if someone suggested, maybe we shouldn't pay them if they're not going to do their work, do you think that one would pass now?
If we don't even know where the money went,
Yes.
that's the problem. How do you know where it's going?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then the other part of what Chairman Knapp was saying is the Department of Audit can't do anything about it either. So it is a system that is intentionally set up to waste your tax dollars, and there is no accountability to it whatsoever. Now, about the only thing we can do is prosecute those people in Manderson, and there are other towns, by the way. It's not just Manderson. That just happens to be the case study. But, they absolutely should be prosecuted. And, frankly, folks at the Department of Audit need to be held accountable for what they didn't do either. Because this is one of those things, right? If you see something is wrong, if you are walking down the street and you see somebody break into a car, it's obvious, right? They take a hammer out and smash the window and they reach inside and grab a purse. Well, any thinking normal human being, well, maybe some millennials wouldn't do this, but any normal person would pick up the phone and say, hey, Mr. Policeman, I just saw this guy break into this car. Here's the license plate, and here's what the dude looks like. It is their civic duty to report those things. Similarly, if you work in government and you see something wrong, you see a crime being committed, it is your responsibility to say, hey, there's something wrong here. And yet, all of these people at the Department of Audit, well, they just go about what they do, which evidently is nothing. And they just don't do anything. There is no accountability, and the liberal, red-coated Republicans intentionally set it up that way.
They did turn it over to DCI. We heard them say that.
Yeah, they did do that.
But have we ever run into, and I'm not going to go down this rabbit trail now, but have we ever run into any other reports that were given to DCI? And it's kind of like sending them to the AG. They just get shelved in a drawer somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like a conservative bill in Albert Summers' desk.
Yes, yes. There's lots of things that ended up on the AG's desk that nothing ever happened. And see, this is the problem in government, specifically Wyoming government, is there are people in positions of power that don't really give a crap about the law. And they expect you to follow it, but when it comes down to it, they don't have to worry about it. Harriet Hageman is next.
It's spring-ish in Wyoming. Well, what that means for the uninitiated is that it's going to be 70 degrees one day and then snow 1.5 feet the next. And really, if you don't like those two options, just wait a little bit. The weather will change. I know, it sounds a little stressful, but really you should put your mind at ease and buy a pair of socks from the Buffalo Wool Company. They'll keep you warm and dry even on the nastiest, coldest spring-ish day, and they'll keep you cool and dry even when it's 75 and sunny. To get you a pair, go to their website, thebuffalowoolco.com. Trust me, you're not going to be disappointed. Are you one of those guys that listen to the president just a little bit too closely and now you're tired of winning? Are you getting the feeling that there's been way too many good things happening in our country and you just can't take it anymore? Well, if you are, and you think you should follow Rosie O'Donnell's example and get the heck out of Dodge, you need to call Rebecca Bextel at eXp Realty. She'll make those foreign country living ideas a reality for you. All you have to do is call 307-699-3519, and she'll make sure some freedom-loving, red-blooded American will now live in the home that you no longer want. If you want to sell your house, or if you want to buy one that's way better than the house you have right now, give Rebecca a call. Again, her phone number is 307-699-3519.
I've never felt the freedom like I do. I feel stronger every day, don't you? Well, I can show you how. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. I've never felt the freedom like I do. I feel stronger every day. I'm only gonna get stronger.
Cowboy State Politics is only getting bigger. This program is expanding at a rate that I don't even think probably Stephen Hawking could figure it out, but it's much bigger than any other Wyoming podcast. Welcome back to the program, my friends. Cowboy State Politics Live. I'm David Iverson, your illustrious host, Wyoming's conservative voice. Welcome back to the program, my friends. If you want to be part of today's show, the phone number in the studio is 307-374-8989. If you want to weigh in on the really shocking audio that we played during the first hour of the program about the Department of Audit. You know, you don't think of the terms Department of Audit and think that that's going to be any fun at all. But that was a large time. I really enjoyed that segment simply because it shows the absolute ineptitude of the Redcoats. You know, they've been in power for a really long time, and the direct result of their leadership is the town of Manderson, is the town of Kirby, is probably Buffalo, Wyoming, Johnson County. They are one of the people that had screwed up audits too, which, by the way, a Wyoming judge threw out at court. But anyway, this is a big issue, and if you want to know where your tax dollars are going, you can't tell if it's Manderson or Kirby or some of these other places because nobody's being held accountable. Well, yesterday on the program, we had an opportunity to talk to Representative Harriet Hageman. This is becoming a monthly thing on the program. I think it's great. and we just get a monthly update of what's happening. And I really appreciate Harriet for making the time for us. So she wasn't able to do a video interview this time. So this one, we just have Harriet on the phone. But here's our discussion from yesterday.
Joining us back on the program is U.S. Representative Harriet Hageman. Good morning, Harriet. How are you this morning?
Good morning, David. I'm wonderful. I'm in Wyoming.
Oh, right on. You're not in the swamp anymore. How long of a trip do you have out here?
I will be here until Sunday.
Oh, right on. Well, there's a couple of items that I've been dying to talk to you about. The first one being just what your overall impression of Trump's big, not so beautiful bill anymore is. It amazes me that the Democrats have to remove one word out of the title. But what's your overall picture of it?
It's a good bill for the state of Wyoming and for the country. It's going to prevent a 22% increase in taxes across the board. There are huge incentives in there and opportunities in there for additional energy development in the state of Wyoming. It requires that we actually start better managing our national forests, which is going to be helping some of our logging companies right here in Wyoming. It provides certainty in terms of logging. There are a whole variety of things. The immigration side of it is absolute. The Senate and the parliamentarian left our immigration bill that came out of the Judiciary Committee. H.R. 2 was what it was in the last session. They left it largely intact. And so we are going to, the people who are using our immigration system are going to now start paying for it rather than having that entire burden borne by the American tax-paying public. We actually, we're going to be investing $170 billion in border security, additional ICE agents, the border wall, more technology. I mean, across the board, the tax, the energy, and the immigration reform and border security reform, those three items alone were well worth voting for.
Okay, great. Well, I know that there has been online a ton of, I think most of it is misinformation, but there again, I don't really know exactly how, what the Senate parliamentarians' position is, but I was hoping that you could just give my listeners just a quick rundown. I mean, where did she come from? I mean, I know what a parliamentarian's position is, but I think it struck a lot of people as a little bit odd that we're letting, an unelected person, make changes to a piece of legislation. So could you just explain that for us?
Kind of.
Okay, fair enough. That's better than what I know about it.
Well, I'm mystified too as to how she has the kind of power that she has. She was appointed by Harry Reid many, many, many years ago, and everybody and their dog knows what a corrupt crap Harry Reid was.
Well,
now,
yeah.
But at the same time, she is the gatekeeper in terms of whether we are complying with the 1974 Budget Control Act in relation to how reconciliation is done. And that's just the rules. So the reconciliation is a very unusual type of process that we get to use when we have the House, the Senate, and the presidency, and it allows us to do budget items, not policy, pure budget, pure spending, and revenue generating items through a process that we only need to have 51 votes in the Senate rather than 60. So it's not subject to the filibuster. And so there are 6 primary rules that we must comply with. One includes that, again, can't be policy. It has to be more budget-oriented than policy-oriented. Right. The other thing is we can't touch Social Security. So there was a lot of misinformation out there about how we're gutting Social Security and Medicare for seniors. Absolutely untrue. In fact, the only area where we touched Social Security was to give an additional tax break to seniors. She has to do what's called the bird rule. That's it. That's why we call it the bird bath. It has to go through the bird bath with her looking at the intent behind a particular provision and saying this is more policy oriented versus it being budget oriented. And so that's why she gets to do what she gets to do. Now, keep in mind, when the Dems a couple of years ago did the so-called Inflation Reduction Act,
Right.
she did the same thing to them. One of them was they were trying to have a federal minimum wage of $15 an hour. She rejected that. And she said that is more policy oriented rather than budget oriented. So I don't think she's been as heavy handed with the Democrats as she has with us. I'll be very honest about that. But at the same time, she's ultimately the person who makes the decision of whether the Senate has complied with the bird bath.
I mean, it's kind of strange in and of itself, because, in parliamentary procedure, your parliamentarian, really, they only do anything if they're asked. And the parliamentarian, and if they're not asked a question during whatever meeting it is, they just sit there and they're silent. I mean, the parliamentarian doesn't make any action. So I was just a little confused as to how this person was able to affirmatively make changes to a bill when, her name's the parliamentarian. So, typically she should just answer questions. But I think that clears it up for us a little bit. Now, one of the things.
David, keep in mind, the Democrats were asking the question.
Okay. That answers it.
Yeah. See, they're part of it too. So everything that we did in this 800-page bill, they ran by her and said this does not comply with the Byrd rule. So that's why we have this situation.
Well, we yet another thing we can thank the Democrats for. Well, one of the items that, and this isn't necessarily related to the big, beautiful bill, but one of the things you've been working on a lot lately is the roadless rule. And I know that you explained that to my listeners a couple of episodes ago, but why don't you just tell me where we're at with the roadless rule and what you're doing with it and how that's going?
Well, there are some very exciting developments. As you know, I filed a lawsuit against the roadless rule in 2001, right after it came out.
Yep.
I was hired by the state of Wyoming. I was the special assistant attorney general, and I filed a lawsuit. And oddly enough, I got a nationwide injunction against that rule.
No, that's funny.
It's the only nationwide injunction that I ever received as a practicing attorney. And then Dave Friedenthal didn't defend that on appeal. And the Bush administration came in and they said, look, we're going to change the roadless rule. Don't worry about it. Withdraw your lawsuit. Vacate the decision. We're going to change the roadless rule. We're going to fix this. And then they never did. So, that's one of my criticisms of the second Bush administration, is that they really messed that up. But what has happened is that the Trump administration, they have announced the Secretary of Agriculture has announced that they are going to repeal the roadless rule. This is a huge development. If you care at all about managing and protecting our national forests, this is a huge development. This is a huge step in the right direction. I'm incredibly excited by this. I didn't necessarily see it coming, although I've been demanding it for quite some time. But they are going to be repealing. Brooke Rollins has announced. So they're going to go through the process of repealing the roadless rule, and that's to the benefit of everybody. What it did is it denied access, management, and use to 58.5 million acres of National Forest Service lands, including 3.2 million acres right here in Wyoming. Why that's significant is that these catastrophic forest fires and the pine beetle outbreak, those are largely the result of the roadless rule and not being able to get in there and properly manage this resource to prevent those kinds of catastrophic events.
Well, I know if you drive anywhere around, and it's not just Teton County, but that's the one that pops into my head as you're going into, I guess, Du Bois. I mean, there's just the entire hillsides that are nothing but beetle kill. And then, when there are other places where there's been a forest fire, I mean, there's lots of those last year. I mean, with the roadless rule, you can't even get in there and log it. And I mean, it's just a bunch of matchsticks standing up.
You can't get in there to log it, but you can't get in there to protect it. So one of the things, I just went to a trade trip, and I went to Japan, and we met with it was a natural resource committee. So we were meeting with their natural resource folks over there. they have dramatically reduced the incidence of forest fires in Japan by doing what? By building roads and logging.
Weird.
And it's weird. Yeah, exactly. So we know that it works. I mean, it really does work. Active management works. And that's what we need to do. Now, should there be wilderness areas? Sure. Should there be roadless areas? Sure. But not of this magnitude. And what they did with that rule was they essentially created a situation where it was such an enormous area, and they never took into consideration the individual needs of those particular areas.
I've got one more item on my list that I'm dying to know what you think of. But one of the items that was removed from the big, beautiful bill was all of the NFA items. So the suppressors and...
No, those went back in.
Oh, did they?
Yeah, I believe that they went back in. The taxes on suppressors, that went back into the bill.
Okay, well, that's excellent news. I was under the impression that got stripped out.
It did, but I think it went back in. So one of the things that happens when you work with the parliamentarian is she may say, the way that you have worded this has made it more policy rather than budget. If you go back and you reword it this way, it will pass muster. So there are things that this was a very fluid process that took place in the Senate. You know, we did our bill, but the whole reconciliation actually takes place in the Senate. We did our bill, and that's what they worked off of. That was the framework. But then she goes in and says, no, you have to word it this way or that way, or you have to put it in this particular section rather than that one. And then things would pass muster. So my understanding, the taxes have been removed on suppressors.
Well, that's excellent news. And I guess that means I should ease off of my criticism of the Senate parliamentarian.
Well, you know, she is doing her job, and we can all criticize her as much as we want to. I do think that she was harder on us. One of my frustrations was that the Democrats shoved a lot of really bad policy into the so-called Inflation Reduction Act, and that was done via reconciliation. And my view is if she approved it to go into a bill via reconciliation, we should be able to remove it or repeal it via reconciliation. And she didn't allow us to do that. And that was my frustration. I didn't think that she was even handed.
Well, it doesn't sound like she was. I mean, it really, when you look at it, kind of sounds like it was a bit of a mixed bag. But I agree with you that I think overall that that Trump's bill is going to be a boon for Wyoming. Well, Harriet,
it is.
Unfortunately, we've kind of come to the end. I'll just go ahead and give you the last word, and then I got to run.
Well, it is a good bill. It's a good bill for Wyoming, and it's a good bill for the country. Could it have been better? Yes. Would I have preferred the House version? Yes. At the same time, we can do additional reconciliations. This isn't the end. We can do another reconciliation. I don't know if there's the appetite to do it, because I'll tell you what, this is an astonishing amount of work. You know, Republicans we don't vote in lockstep. We don't act in lockstep like Democrats tend to do. And as a result, you've got an awful lot of personalities, and you've got an awful lot of interests that you have to try to appease through this process. It just is the way that our legislation works. And I think people need to understand that our republic, the way that we govern, yeah, it's messy and it can be difficult and hard and all of those things. It's still the best process and the best procedure of any in the entire world, and we have more freedoms and liberties as a result.
You're absolutely right. I don't remember who said it, but maybe it was Benjamin Franklin. But this is the worst possible form of government, but it's better than all the others.
That's exactly right.
Well, Harriet, I appreciate you taking the time to visit with me this morning. And as you all already know, you're welcome here anytime you like.
Thanks, David.
All right. Have a good afternoon.
So there's my discussion with Harriet Hageman from yesterday. A couple of corrections. I was a little bit a little unsure about the NFA items, so I did a little bit of research on that, and I'll tell you about that in just a second. But let's go ahead and talk to our friend Jerry Jackson in Rock Springs. Jerry, how you doing this morning, my friend?
You know, I'm doing really good. We got about a 30-minute drizzle this morning, and it cooled things off and got things a little bit wet, but I'm doing great.
Hey, I'll trade you. It was 102 degrees here yesterday. Felt like it was burning my face off.
We got up to 90 yesterday, and that was hot.
Well, still down there around the red desert, man, like 90 degrees could feel like 120. So, Jerry, what's on your mind this morning, man? You want to talk about this audit situation or the NFA items, or what you got?
Those two I want to make a point on. The first one is I was balancing my checkbook while listening to this morning.
How ironic.
And I think everybody needs to listen to that while they balance their checkbook. Because I made a $14 mistake, and I'm still upset about it because I just had all these dreads of how far back I had to go to find a $14 mistake. Well, it was simple. I just didn't check it off on my statement. And that made it easy because I found 14 and, you know, but this is outrageous what the state is doing. This is, someone needs to be fired.
Oh, I think I would go much farther than that, Jerry. I think somebody needs to be arrested and prosecuted.
Well, that is on my mind too, but they need to fire them right now.
Yes, absolutely. And here's the thing that, and I hope this came out clear during the segment. This is not an isolated incident. It's how the entire Department of Audit functions. And really, it's the fault of the legislature, those people who were in power in the legislature too, because they didn't do anything with it either.
Well, they don't seem to care.
Nope.
You know, they don't seem to care. And this right here, you know, I'm getting to the age that I worry about what I leave, the problems I leave for my wife and family. So I'm real critical on, you know, finances and stuff. And I make it real clear in my books and, you know, everything that I take care of. And here, I'm worried about a $14 mistake, and they don't care about me at all.
No. Well, and here's the irony. Like when I was listening to what you had to say, Jerry, what I thought was all of those people in the legislature, maybe some of them are wealthy and they don't have to worry about it, but almost all of them have to balance their own checkbook. They have to run their house just like you and I do. And then they go down to Cheyenne and then they throw all that out the window, and it's obvious that they don't give a crap about our money or where it's going or anything about it.
Jerry, this is Agent 29, and I'm listening to what you had to say, and I appreciate your comments. And you said several times, they just don't care. Well, let me tell you, there's a new sheriff in town.
Yeah, I think that's obvious.
Yeah, and we can't give up, man. I mean, and I've meant to call in the last few shows also, but you've had put out so much good information, I didn't want to interrupt.
Well, I appreciate it. You're welcome here anytime you want, Jerry. I was just going to say you were too busy balancing your own checkbooks, so you didn't have time to call in. And interestingly enough, I noticed that on my screen you wanted to talk about the NFA items from the Harriet interview, and right before you called, I was about to correct a little bit about what she had to say. But go ahead and tell me what you thought about that part of the interview.
Okay, the NFA was added back, and I listened to all that. But what they did is they took the $200 away to register the suppressor.
Exactly.
But you still have to fill out the form, which makes you having to register your weapon.
Exactly. That is precisely what I was going to point out. And here's the thing. And again, like I said, after that interview, I went and did quite a bit of research on what actually happened. And the truth is, the only thing they did was lessen the burden, right? You don't have to pay $200, but you still have to get a tax stamp. You still have to register it. You still have to wait for it. So, all right, they gave us a break on the fee, but that's about all they did.
Yeah, I'd just soon pay them $200 to not have to register myself.
Well, yeah, I think you're right on that.
Okay, that's the two main things, and like I say, I really appreciate your show, and that really hit home this morning. And I think everybody, this should come up. They should post this on their Facebook or ever what, and every time they do their checkbook, they need to listen to that program.
Well, thank you very much, Jerry. You have a good day, my friend, and God bless the Republic. All right, my friends, welcome back to the program. Jerry is exactly right, and I really appreciate what he had to say. That, hey, he was balancing his checkbook while listening to that, and I think the sentiment that he has is entirely warranted. That most of the people in Cheyenne, well, and I shouldn't say most anymore, because the conservatives are in charge of the House of Representatives. But how about this? How about we say a lot of the people in Cheyenne, they don't give a crap about where your money goes. Now, fortunately, there are some folks in the House and on the Management Audit Committee that obviously they do. And I really hope that they don't just do this committee meeting, drop it, and then go on. Look, we did our work, we're done. Yeah, I really hope that that's not the case. Representative, how are you this morning?
Well, good morning, my friends. I've been watching the show on YouTube and kind of biting my tongue a few times because I was at that Management Council meeting yesterday.
Oh, yeah?
And anybody who says auditing and accounting and stuff like that is boring doesn't even know what they're talking about.
Well, that's kind of that's your bag. So what was? Give me what happened there. Give me the front row report.
Well, we've got like 3 minutes, so I'm going to give you the Cliff's Notes version. First off, you had said, it's hard to find audit reports on the auditor's website. Boy, howdy, you're not kidding. Here, folks, is the best way to find anything. Go to Chat GPT and say, how do I find the Manderson audit?
And what do you
Because
get?
that's the only, and then it tells you, go here, go here, go here, go here. Drop this down, click on this, drop that down, click on that. It's not easy.
Well, you wouldn't think that would have been done intentionally, do you?
Well, I find that most government websites are hard to use.
Well, that's true.
I find that the government doesn't really want you to see what they're doing. Or can they change it? So, I found the Manderson audit horrific. I was an auditor. and the fact, first off, that these political subdivisions are tardy, but so tardy in filing required reports. And then this one, the census, is a real easy one. It's very basic assets and income. This should not be hard. I've reviewed a bunch, probably 100 of them over the past few months, and it's no big deal. Okay, you could do it yourself on your own finances. And the fact that they got all of that wrong it's horrific.
All right. So the next question, Ann, is what should we do about it?
Well, we're putting sunshine on it, so that's the good thing. I understand the Department of Audit's position. They are doing as they are instructed to do. They have no authority to do anything beyond that. And they have no teeth. As was said in the meeting yesterday, they have absolutely no teeth. So all they can do is put sunshine on it.
Well, and I think that's the part that's intentional. I mean, and you heard Chairman Knapp say, hey, there was a bill to tie this to revenue, and nobody really wanted to do that.
So, as you many times, we all know, I got this job. Ken got his job because we were really tired of seeing how things are being done. Auditing is really important, and it's not there to catch people doing something wrong. It's to prove we're doing it right.
There you go.
And when we don't prove that we're doing it right, we might as well be doing it wrong. And when Manderson has no receipts, you've got to wonder who's minding the store there.
Somebody, because they're certainly hiding a lot of stuff. And it's, I found that if there is negligence to that level, that it has to be intentional. Like you are intentionally not doing that stuff.
And your point was very well made. That was an excellent way to put that. And it immediately made me think about election integrity. That's what these things are about, are not to go find the problems, but so that nobody can look at this and say, well, there might be something wrong. We know there isn't because we got everything. And that's the kind of thinking that we conservatives are bringing to the legislature, which has been lacking for eons.
Well, and
It is.
one more
Yeah,
question,
go ahead.
and I know you got to run, but what did you think about the caller we had, Jerry's comments that he was balancing his checkbook while listening to it?
Well, I was a banker for over 40 years, personal banker. Credit unions, I didn't deal with millionaires very much, just real people. I'm here to tell you that most people don't even know what that means. So kudos to Jerry, because Jerry's 1 in 100 probably who does balance his checkbook and knows. Now, I find conservatives do a better job of this than we seem to count our pennies better than other folks. But most people don't have a clue. They couldn't tell you right off the top of their head with $100 how much money they owe, how much money they have.
Right.
Why would they expect their government to do differently?
There you go. Very, very
We're
well
a
said.
We're a financial train wreck.
Well, and we both got to run, but
Yep.
if you wouldn't mind, get with Agent 29, and let's set up a time for you to come on the program and talk about this a little bit further. I think this is a big story, and it's one if we don't pound on it, it's going to get lost.
It's an important story. I'd love to.
Okay.
Talk to you guys soon.
Yep. Thanks. Thank you, Representative. That was Representative Ann Lucas from Cheyenne. She beat one of my I don't even want to call them favorites, because favorites implies something positive. But she dispatched with the title of representative for Dan Zwanitzer. And we'll have Agent 29 set up a time, and we can get Ann Lucas on the program, and we can talk about, since she was there, since she's involved, she's a representative, so that we can talk about this. But that way overdoes it for today's program. Make sure that you listen to Cowboy State Politics. You can listen to the podcast anywhere that you can find them. iHeartRadio, iTunes, TuneIn, really any of them, anywhere. And don't miss tomorrow's episode of Cowboy State Politics. We're going to do Open Line Friday. And we're only going to have a 1 hour show because it is a zoo here in Sheridan. But we'll do an hour of Open Line Friday. For now, from the base of the Bighorns, I'm David Iverson, and this is Cowboy State Politics.